What's up, guys? I am here with Dr. Courtney. This is the third time I've done an intro for this video, and I started with Miss Courtney, and it didn't work out well.
It's like a preschool teacher.
So we're starting again. So why don't you just walk us through your pedigree?
Okay, I have been working in neuroscience over 15 years at this point. My BA is in psychology, and then I went on to do a PhD in neuroscience, specifically addiction neuroscience. And so I have quite a bit of experience in how substances affect the mind, how stress interplays with that. And then my specific expertise is actually the neuropeptide oxytocin, which is involved in bonding and love and stress modulation. So I did a lot with the brain. I was a basic scientist first. Now I work more in clinical science, but I did quite a bit of behavioral pharmacology, looking at neuronal pathways and how things talk to each other. So the structure of the brain and all that kind of stuff. I was in a lab working with animals in behavioral pharmacology. I work in maternal mental health, so I did kind of a 180. I don't do anything basic research. I don't work in a lab at all.
And what's kind of your underlying expertise within that field and arena?
The things that I was really interested in spending more time in was how can we build connection? How can we build community to buffer against mental health and substance use disorder issues? And within that, I got really interested in how lived experience specifically builds connection. And so I've done quite a bit of work with bringing peer support specialists, so people who have lived experience of addiction or recovery, onto clinical care teams, community health workers, and doulas, just to support medical care and clinical outcomes and fill some of the gaps that are left by medicine and science and all the more sterile type things, bringing some love and connection and shared experience into that.
What do you want to bring out into the world that you're not able to bring out through the landscape of medicine and academia?
Medicine.
Yeah.
So one of the things that has really been a big issue for me in the last 2 years is I work so heavily in the community, and I think that building relationships and partnerships like really come from spending time together, being able to support one another in different aims. But medicine, especially academic medicine, where there are aims on grants and things like that, don't allow for that relationship building to take place. And I think because of that, a lot of relationships, whether they're one-on-one or partnerships with communities, are falling apart. And so I really want to step into a space where the heart can lead and there's time for it to lead, and we can have space for feeling instead of logic. So going into science from the beginning was really based on two things. One, I was really looking for answers around my own emotions. Like I felt like if I could understand my brain, if I could understand why I acted the way that I acted or felt the way that I felt, then it would fix all of my issues. So I was looking for just this like clear-cut answer. And once I got into it, I realized that it wasn't going to happen. And I worked even harder, and I was just kind of like pushing as much as I could to get whatever that clear-cut answer was. And towards the end of school, which was 2016, I just started to get physically very sick. I started to develop all of these autoimmune symptoms. Nobody was ever quite able to name them. I was physically in a lot of pain. My joints specifically were really a big struggle. I had horrible brain fog. I couldn't think. I wasn't sleeping. I was gaining weight despite eating like the cleanest I've ever eaten. I was having panic attacks, just really kind of falling off the rails. I was struggling to function.
And how about your internal state?
I was so uncomfortable. It was manifesting as panic attacks, but I would like walk around shaking. It felt so chaotic and so scattered. And I would flip flop from feeling incredibly anxious and chaotic and uncomfortable to just totally numb and totally dissociated.
And I imagine that made it difficult to know like what is happening, what is not happening, what's real, what's not real. Can I trust myself? Can I trust the universe? Like, yeah, just speak into the trust a little bit.
The struggle with trust started much, much younger. That's something I've struggled with my entire life. I came from a family that was pretty dysfunctional, and I have some memories of just like having my body tell me what needed to happen, and then as a child being told that that was not allowed, and or I would have to leave, or getting in trouble for that. And so I think from the very beginning I started to really shut down what I was being told internally. Fast forward to when my body started breaking down towards the end of grad school, I was realizing I didn't feel like I could trust the process of science. I didn't feel like I knew how to control my body anymore. I don't know how to control my emotions anymore by suppressing them because I'm having these panic attacks and outbursts. I just felt like I was losing control of literally everything.
And so how have you gone from that place to starting to get back into some of the gifts that you had and beginning to listen?
Yeah. Well, COVID was actually a time that was really helpful for me because I, at the time, was still working in a lab and I physically could not go into it. So there wasn't much work to do. And I just spent a lot of time outside in the backyard, like sitting in the sun. I was just quiet. And I sat in the sun. And I started to realize that I had to first slow my nervous system down before I could do anything else. So I spent a lot of time working just on that, walking, meditating, sitting in the sun. And that opened the door for me to understand, what was moving through my body and how to interface with it. Around that time, maybe a little bit after COVID, I also got a somatic therapist and a somatic coach. This was somebody who was a clinical psychologist, but she had also trained quite a bit in somatic body work. So she had what I felt like I could trust. Like she had an academic medicine background, but she also kind of was in the woo-woo space. And so she would flip between the two until she built enough trust with me to understand, the body is also, one of the things she said was, the most spiritual experience you can have as a human is through your body. And that's never stopped ringing through my head. I worked with her to learn how to get below the neck, which was really I thought I was present at first, but it wasn't until I was able to slowly move down into different parts of my body and identify where things were stuck and how to release them that my life started really shifting. And once that started happening, I did really basic stuff to rebuild trust with my body, which was just at the core, when I was thirsty, drink water, or when I was tired, take a nap. Just if I got even just the most basic of signal to respond to that, so that whatever was happening, my body could start to show me and I could start to understand more intense cues and respond to those. Mm-hmm. So I've just talked a bunch. I'll let you clarify anything.
I mean, how might you be able to take some of that process into what we're doing here?
I think tying everything back together, shared lived experience and mutual understanding is one of the most powerful tools. And so I have walked through the process of feeling absolutely nothing and having it overwhelm me in a way that makes me freeze and fearful and distrusting of everything, and learn step by step how to engage with my body, to listen to my body, and then once I start trusting myself, to start engaging and trusting with outside sources as well. People, the universe, God. I mean, I wasn't able to really develop a relationship with God until I developed a relationship with my body, which I think was really important. And I didn't understand that until further down in the process. I've also learned a lot of tactics and steps and processes to work with fear and to step into fear and to move forward despite fear.
And once you were able to kind of clear out some of that stuff that you had in your physical body, first of all, and you started to develop the connection and actually be able to listen, what has come from that?
Yeah. That's been the most incredible piece of this journey is I've realized that I am somebody who, I think many of us are, feel my way through the world. I feel everything when I walk into a room. And so that has allowed me to be more present in a lot of ways because now I can operate in the world the way that I think I'm supposed to interface with the world. I didn't realize how sensitive I was until I started to clear some of these things out. I've also cleared my antenna, I would say. I have realized that I am somebody who is able to tap into what I've been calling the subtle realms. I am able to, on occasion, communicate with people who have passed away. I can talk to trees. That's a newer development, one of my favorite developments. But really be able to use my body when it's clearer as an antenna for some of the other things that are happening in the universe, other realms, things that are unseen and unheard.
And speaking of seen and heard,
Yeah.
perfect segue of like, I know that has been another struggle of yours.
Yeah.
And when we talked beforehand, you said that maybe talking about that might be helpful. So I just want to open up that space for you.
Yeah, thank you. So I don't know if you could hear this when I was talking about, what I've built a career on, but one of the things that I've done is gotten into spaces where I'm working with peer support specialists or people who are in active addiction or moms who are struggling with mental health issues. And I like those spaces because it gives me a chance to help individuals who have felt left behind or stigmatized or in a lot of shame and guilt feel seen and heard in something that was really difficult for them. And flip that around, help them feel empowered, build trust in their story, and use that to see and meet other people in their darkest moment. And in thinking about that and my kind of obsession with this space, I've realized that my biggest struggle, aside from doubt, self-doubt, is to be seen and heard by other people. Like I constantly don't feel that way. And as I've gone through some of these processes, I've realized that is because I have not allowed myself to be seen and heard. I was a chameleon everywhere I went because I was so afraid and couldn't trust myself. And so I've learned, so many things about connection and meeting others in spaces so that they truly feel seen and heard. Like I feel like that's something that people say about me is that I really do a good job of that. So I'm hoping that is something that I can really continue to help others with.
So it's, on some level, it's the deepest wounds that you carried that you have been able to transmute that you are now bringing into the container.
That's correct.
A la sphere of vocation, sphere of your core wound becomes sphere of vocation. And just to sum those things up, trust in self, others, and the universe, dealing with fear, getting to know fear, getting connected below the head.
Yeah.
Helping others to feel seen and heard.
I would say all those things that you named come from bringing yourself down into your body. That's like the key, the string that runs through all of it.
Is there anything right now that we haven't said that you want to say?
I think The most important thing that I really want to help other people with, because this has been literally the key that has unlocked everything for me, is feeling comfortable in your body with emotions and working with energy that moves through you, not letting that control you, which happens to be my core wound, is this shadow of control.
Control, authority, valor. Yeah, so that's perfect segue. As far as the gene keys go for you, just tell me a little bit about your experience with them.
I started with the Venus sequence. When you first started doing the gene keys, it didn't even resonate with me. Like I would read it and be like, I don't like this. It took me probably another year and more body-based work to be able to feel. The way that I interface with the gene keys is I really feel the frequency of the words, which I know sounds very woo-woo. And so until I was in a space where I could do that, I couldn't even sit with it. So now that I'm there, I've moved recently back to the activation sequence. I've done it more than one time because I don't like to move through each sphere until I feel like I've embodied it.
Anything else in the spiritual world that you want to touch, bring up, just like anything you want to speak in?
My deep dive right now is on more medical systems. So like I'm going deep into Chinese medicine. That's another thing, is I can see energy in people's bodies. I can see how it's moving and where it gets stuck. That's another thing that's unlocked over the course of time. And so I'm digging into Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, alchemy, things like that to help me better understand what I'm seeing. Yeah, and then I just went to Peru and did a whole bunch of spiritual stuff for 2 weeks straight.
We'll do another video about Peru, because there's a lot there.
Yeah. And one takeaway that I'll add for this community that I took away from Peru is it's so much easier to embody some of these spiritual ideals when you're in a community of other people who are operating at the same frequency. I mean, it is like insane how much that changes it.
Yeah.
So
this is a random tidbit to end with, but randomly a year ago November, I set in an audition tape for a movie and got it. And it was a horror movie.
It's called Crimson Cove.
And it's coming out soon. But randomly, the director was like, hey, we need another, what we thought was an extra to be in the movie. Do you know anyone? And I was like, yeah, my girlfriend's around. She can probably come down.
I had just had surgery too. So I had a month off of work. So it just kind of fell into that month off.
So she comes down and they give her a part, and it's like one of the 3 biggest female roles in the movie.
I'm like a main character.
Anyway, I tell you all this because we were around a group of actors and actresses who were all creatives and who lived their lives in that way. And both Courtney and I,
It changed my life.
Just felt so different to be around people that lived their life in that creative sense,
yeah,
versus folks who, are locked into being cogs and doing the 9-to-5 thing and just giving up, essentially. And that's where I see the big difference between you guys and between just how most people are moving through the world is, although you're still in that world, as is Courtney, as am I in some ways, like mentally, we are aware that there's another way to move through the world, and we are actively moving towards that.
I know that if you want to live differently, you have to make different choices.
And do you have a plan B and or cushion as you make this shift or transition?
Not really. I'm just diving headfirst off the cliff because I realized that standing on the edge of the cliff looking over is more painful than diving headfirst over. I don't know what's on the other side, but I do know that it's painful to stand so close to where I want to be and not do anything.
So what you got is 2 people that don't have a plan B, that have taken leaps of faith to be here with you and to share our process as we go through and in real time.
Yeah.
you're going to see what happens when you're willing to take that leap of faith. I think that is probably the biggest way that Courtney and I are going to be able to support and to guide and to help, is by living the example that we want more of the world to live.
Yeah, literally in real time.
In real time.
You did it last year. You're still going through it, and I literally jumped off the cliff 3 weeks ago.
So, thank you for being here. Anything that you want to say to the people before we leave?
I'm glad to be on this ride with you guys.
If you have any questions, feel free to leave them. We'll check in and answer the comments and stuff, and lots more coming in the educational realm. And like I said, we'll do something on Peru. There's lots more stuff coming.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye, guys.